Hello, GRIMMCon, and welcome to What to Expect When You're Expecting a Pen Test. This presentation consists of tips, pitfalls, and successful strategies from my experiences both in my years as a penetration tester and a consumer of tests that can help your engagements to run smoothly and deliver greater return on your investment of time and effort. It is geared toward anyone who is looking to get a test completed or anyone who has an imminent test coming up. Now, this is a large subject and we could spend hours getting into fine detail. However, I believe this high-level introduction will serve to start you down the road to better overall experiences with test engagements. First, a bit more about myself. I've been a penetration testing consultant for the past 8 years, performing tests for federal, state, and local governments, as well as private customers covering traditional and cloud-based deployments. Prior to being a penetration tester, I have experience as a consumer penetration test during my time as an information systems security officer and development experience as a front-end web developer. I view my current job as using my expertise to provide as much useful and actionable information to my customers as possible within the testing timeframe. Outside of testing and writing reports, I'm a dad, a maker, and have been a volunteer for B-Sides DC since the beginning, including being co-director for 5 years. My contact information is on this slide and will be shown again at the end of the presentation for anyone that has further questions. So on to our agenda for today. First, we're going to talk about types of tests just to set the stage. Then we'll talk about strategies for pre-testing, during the test, post-testing, and then some takeaways at the end to sum everything up. So first, let's set the stage. I think of this as our "you are here" map. We're progressing from the least intrusive to the most intrusive at the bottom, or the most complex at the bottom. Now, there is a lot of disagreement in the field as to where these categories start and end, so buyer beware. There's many types of tests as there are testing companies, so you can generally group them into some categories to make some separations between what you might get with different types of tests. Although always ask questions of the testing company or companies that you may be considering working with to understand where they fall on this spectrum. Starting off, first we have a vulnerability scan. This is more of a basic review with automated tools frequently, and usually does not attempt to exploit or verify any of the vulnerabilities that are seen. It's just going to give you a report of here's what we see when we take a look at it from the outside. Again, there may be a slight difference here of verification of vulnerabilities with different test shops. Moving on to a penetration test. This is what I've performed most often in my career. This is usually an announced test, so everybody knows it's going to happen, no surprises or trying to hide. It does attempt to exploit any issues found and verify any possible methods of getting in, and may also go further into the lateral movement and searching for valuable information and even exfiltration of information depending on what you're looking for. Then we have kind of like an offshoot here that applies to penetration test red teams and even purple teams, a targeted test. What this really just means is you're specifying a very specific scope for your testing. So for example, we have a new web application that we're going to be releasing and we want to have a very thorough review, or we're deploying a new physical part of our network, our new physical system that's adding on, and we want to have some clarity as to if that's ready for prime time. Then moving on to another level of complexity, we have a red team. This frequently means force on force, so you're actually exercising your incident response or incident prevention capabilities. There's a much more open scope, timeline, or both to these frequently. Red team tests can run from weeks to months to years. The testing team can leave behind back doors and things to facilitate getting back in. And frequently, this is exercising an IR capability. Also, much less people know on the organization, on your side, what will be if the test is being performed. This is much more labor intensive. It needs much more in-depth planning and support. Most of the strategies we're talking about today will be on the penetration test vulnerability scan side, but I'm just putting this out here so you can have that knowledge of what's in the future. And then purple teams, those are kind of like a red team, but more collaborative, a collaborative red team. So it's an effort between the attackers and your defenders to understand and iterate more quickly through, we see this, okay, here's how you fix or detect that, and then moving forward and fixing as you go. So now that we've set the stage for testing, we're moving into pretest. Pretest is where everything starts. Just like security overall is better baked in than bolted on, the more you can define what you're looking for and what concerns you have before you start the test in this stage, the better you are. It's always a bummer when you've made some assumptions and not really asked the questions, and the team hasn't really answered your questions before the test, and we get to an impasse or something that stops testing when the team is on site. That at that point you're now costing money and time, and that as somebody who has had tests, I would want my test team functioning and actually working while they're on site, because I'm paying them per diem on site time and things like that. So I want to maximize what happens when they're in the room versus, and spending a little bit more time in pre can help me with that. So first, understand your why. Why are we having a test? Do we want information? Do we just want like a picture of how we're doing? Are we trying to satisfy a compliance need, for example, PCI, HIPAA, or a financial requirement? Or is the test required for legal reasons? I have personally performed tests that have been ordered from one agency to another as a result of a breach or a result of another issue. They want to have clarity on what's going on in that environment. After you've decided why, or you have a clear idea of why we're having a test, then we can figure out what we want out of the test. Again, are we looking for information? Are we trying to generate some motivation for a part of the organization? Are we trying to gain ammunition with the C-suite to move things, or to get them to give us funding and time to do things that are important to us from a security standpoint that we know we need to do, but we just may not have been organizationally allowed to do at this point? Or verification, as I said before, verification that a new product or service or area of the network is ready for prime time. And then finally, and then another thing to consider once we've considered our what is, how are we going to implement what we get out of this test? Are we planning to have some time for our IT staff to remediate any issues found, make any updates, make any recommended changes for an improved security state at the end? So then, also during this process, you should take the opportunity to try to get to know the team that you're working with. And this is important because there are a lot of different personalities of penetration testing teams. Some are more aggressive, some are more collaborative, some are at different areas of maturity and of course different areas of cost. Cost is definitely a consideration here. But as you talk to the team, understand what you're comfortable with, and if you're not comfortable, maybe move to a different team. There are definitely lots of penetration testing shops out there. So, it's the old adage of, if something doesn't seem right, maybe it's a time to try something else. But once you've landed on a team that you're comfortable with, ask the other questions. How many testers will be coming on site? What will they need when they get on site? And then, what is the process? How are they going to do it? Have them walk you through a high level. How is the test going to go? What happens first, second, third? And then the basic timelines for those. Obviously, things will change in practice. And then consider the sensitivities at your site. Is it hard to get ports open? Or is meeting space very difficult to come by? Things like that. All of these can be considerations that trip things up or make things more difficult. But if you consider them ahead of time, it might smooth things along and have things go more quickly. Scope. Scope is the most important thing to testers. For me, the thing that slows me down as a tester and gives me the most challenge is when the scope of the network or the provided documentation is unclear or incorrect. So definitely take the time to gather and collect those IP ranges. Network diagrams are great, but we really want to understand how big is the haystack that we're looking through. And that allows us to figure out, one, how many people we need and how quickly we need to move once we get on site. And I know it can be difficult to get a full inventory of your of your infrastructure. Some places are very large and things move quickly. Some places are smaller and have a little bit more static setup. So that can be an advantage either way, but do your best to get that map set out and try to keep that over time. It's kind of a knowing what you need to defend is also useful from a blue team or from your business side as well. And also try to understand or try to collect a list of things that are concerning for you or fragile. An example would be during a test, we have been told not to target a system during business hours because it's either critical for the operation of the business or it was a part of the hours tracking or pay system. So we were able to adjust our timing as to when we were going to test that system in order to just limit the impact to day-to-day business. So that's an example of going that extra level from your inventory to understanding endpoints and understanding what they do, so we can we can develop a plan that maintains the safety of that asset, but also gets a comprehensive test. And then the final thing that I like to ask for in my pre-scoping is for your oh no moments or your crown jewels. These are the things that if it was taken out of your control, or if the data was stolen, or if the system was taken offline, or if the data was altered, would be an oh no moment, if this would be an existential threat to your business model. So the reason that we want to know this is not so that we can get the easy button and go straight to it and say, haha, we found your crown jewels and here they are. It's so that we can develop in our outbrief and in our reports a story of all of the different possible avenues of attack to get to those, and then help you to shut those down as quickly as possible. Now, during the test, moving on to during the test. So we've done all of our questioning. We've asked our questions, and we know our test team, and we're ready for them to be on site. We know how many people are coming. We've got the conference room ready to go. We've got the network drops set up. Then the Pentest team comes on site, sets up, and starts their scans. Now remember, most penetration tests are not trying to hide from you. We have a limited amount of time to provide as much information as possible. Very commonly for me, it's 1 week. So really 4 days. We have some setup time at the beginning. We have some teardown time at the end, which truncates our time frame even more. I like to joke that we're the bright pink dump truck on fire coming in through the front door. We make a lot of noise because we're moving very quickly. But that said, the first thing we want to do is try to avoid the blame game. Now, the most important part, I think, of the blame game, and I don't love the word blame, but is the internal side, on the customer side. People get anxious when the pen testers come in. I've definitely seen it at every type of business that I've gone into. People think they're going to get in trouble, they're going to get fired, things like that. So the one thing I would say here is do what you can to emphasize that this is an information gathering. This is so that you can use a niche area of expertise to gain further information about your network and your business that will hopefully improve the way that you do everything. And try not to point fingers. One thing that I say about all of the tests is anyone can be gotten. Anyone can be phished. Anyone can have their machine exploited in some way, shape, or form. And frequently, especially when we start moving into lateral movement, we're not targeting anybody specifically, and it's not really anyone's specific fault that something happened. But I also definitely have seen people tighten up in meetings when management asks the question, well, whose machine was this? So it's something to keep in mind, and it's human nature to want to view this as a test, and sometimes it is, but do what you can to lower that fear with your team. And then also on the penetration tester side, they can tell you what they're testing. In the early part, it'll be a wide net that they're casting across your entire IP range or your entire network range. But as the test goes on, it narrows down more and more and more. So if there's something it seems strange, go and ask the testers. Hey, we're seeing some strange activity on this one IP address or on this one server name or endpoint name. Is that something that you guys are testing? If it is, we can certainly pause the test. I've done that many times. We've stopped scanning, we've stopped pen testing, we've stopped on that IP address, moved on to other things, and continued being productive while the customer can triage and return it to a state that they're happy with. So, but that communication with your testers, keep the communications flowing. The test is a relationship. Keep asking questions. If you see stuff that is concerning you or activities that are concerning you, run them by your test team. Be open with them and say, hey, this concerns us. And then the tester should be willing to work with you to come up with a solution to get the test done, but also not impact your business. And then finally, consider how you're going to deal with critical issues. This doesn't mean you have to have like a step 1, step 2, step 3 plan, but have an idea in mind. Like if something critical comes up, who is going to quarterback the effort to deal with it, and how are we going to expect to potentially have to give time to one of our staff to fix any issues that come up. Because it's common when we find a critical issue that gives access to a system that we as a testing team will exploit the system, access the system, and then we're good to go at that point. We have our access that we need, and then we'll let the customer know and say, hey, we think you should patch this before we even go any further. We think this is something that you should give attention to right now. And at least give that opportunity to our customers so that they can consider that and decide whether or not they agree. And that is, again, totally up to you. Okay, so the test is completed. Testers are packing up their equipment. There's no more activity going on your network. Everyone is breathing a bit of a sigh of relief because everything is done. Well, at least the active portion of the test is completed. So now, what should you get from your test team? They have something to deliver to you. One of my coworkers likes to say we pen test for free and we write the reports for our pay. So there are several types of output that you can expect to get from your penetration testing team. First and foremost, the one that will probably happen first is an outbrief. And outbriefs come in many sizes and flavors. So there's the general outbrief, which is a high-level overview. Testers will go over basic findings, things that they're going to put in their report, general observations, maybe some high-level recommendations. Again, this is something that you should have discussed in the that you could have discussed in the pre-test planning. Is how technical is your report? Can you show us an example? But for the general outbrief, it will be high-level things. The important thing about the overall outbrief is this gives you a chance to get your decision makers in the room. Again, going back to what we talked about in pre-planning, if you're looking to get some information or ammunition with your management levels to drive some change, to say, hey, we really need to change this policy across the network, or hey, we really need to improve our system patching process, or hey, we really need to decommission that really old piece of equipment that we're not actually using and is kind of a hole in our network. If you're trying to deliver that kind of message, the outbrief allows you to let the testers deliver it for you. I've definitely been in outbriefs where the customer wanted to make a point or something, and they had a hard time getting the information or the message to stick from an internal perspective. And as testers, we were glad to provide backup, to provide support. Yes, we see this too, and we think it also needs to be fixed. And for some reason, the third-party perspective makes that message land much better. Another type of useful format outside of just the general outbrief is the tech-focused or the tech-to-tech outbrief. This one is much more informal, and I believe it should be. What generally happens with these is the test team, maybe not all of it, maybe the people who found most of the issues or who are the most up-to-date on everything, or it could be the entire testing team. and whatever IT staff wants to come in. So this could be, firewall admins, server admins. It depends on how varied and how large your particular staff is. I've had tech focused briefs that were 30 people. I've had tech focused briefs that were 5 of us. But it's really an information sharing situation. It's tech guys talking tech. And the advantage here is that when that report comes out a month later, the IT staff will have already had a direct conversation about what was in the report, and they can also ask questions, clarifying questions to get further detail that's specific to your environment. And when they get the report 2 months later or a month later, however long it is, they can say, "Oh, right, I had that conversation with that one tester. Matt was his name, yeah, and he explained that to me, and I know what I'm doing. I know how to fix that." So it can be a really useful knowledge sharing exercise, and something that you can request from your team. Hey, I'd really like to have a 30-minute or 45-minute discussion between our IT staff and your testers when we're getting close to the end, just to review everything and get a clear idea. And you can cover so much more talking back and forth than is able to be conveyed in even the best written report. I'm talking about the written report. The report is an output. It's definitely something that's useful, something to file if you have a compliance requirement where you need to have proof of the report. It's also something that can be reviewed year over year. So again, if you're looking for ammunition for more funding, driving home a point to leadership, you can request more information in the executive summary part, or more pointed recommendations there. If you're wanting to ensure your technical team has a very clear readout, you can ask for further information about how issues can be fixed and how the recommendations are going to be communicated and what level of detail. Definitely you can ask for an example report. Can you show us an example of what type of reports you provide? And another thing to know at this point is can you reach out for clarification if you get the report and you have a question, or if somebody just didn't take a note on something and they want to know. Every outbrief that I have been in, the final slide is, here's our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us. And amazingly, it happens very rarely, but I would be glad to go through any item in any of one of my reports and clarify it or answer questions about it if somebody had them. Further after the test, always ask more questions. Always be asking questions, clarify things. Don't leave things to chance. So once issues come out, and almost every test will find something, major or minor, who is going to perform the fixes? Is this something that you're allowing time for within your IT staff post-test? IT staffs have a lot to do. They're usually staffed right to what you need, or usually less if you ask the IT staff. I know that IT staffs are very busy. They have a lot to do. And so you'll need to consider, do I need to build some time in afterwards to make the fixes? Will another third party be involved? Do you have a contractor who might be helping you, assisting? Will the testing team be helping with some remediation efforts? None of the teams that I've been involved in have that, but it's possible that your test provider has a service to do that type of work. And then work on prioritizing. So you're going to get a list of findings or issues or opportunities for improvement, depending on what they're called. And they'll be usually categorized by critical, high, medium, low. Prioritize those, and not just necessarily by the criticality rating. Prioritize them by how easy they are to fix. If there's 3 or 4 of them that are easy to knock off in an afternoon or in a couple of days, do those first. Check a few things off. It's great, and that gives you time while those things are being checked off to have the meetings for the more intrusive changes that are going to require testing and maybe a rollout to a subset of machines to determine if the change has taken, and if it hasn't, to ensure that it hasn't caused any negative effects. But as those complex issues are decided and mapped out, if you've taken a little bit of time in the pre-planning stages to consider this, as we talked about before, and then now we're taking the time in the post stages to actually put that into action, we can hopefully smooth out the process of fixing what needs to be fixed, improving the business, and moving forward. So our takeaways. Pen tests seem scary, but I promise they don't have to be. Planning ahead, asking the questions, making sure that you have clarity on everything and not taking anything for granted can definitely smooth it along. Again, before, know why you're having the test, know what you're hoping to get out of the test and drive toward that. That can help you make those decisions during the process of, hey, we don't need to follow this down the path because that's not the type of information I'm looking for, or yes, that test is something that I want to pursue until the end. And then how you're going to implement what comes out of it. Again, I know why I'm doing it, I know what I want, and I know what I'm hoping to do afterwards. Ask the questions before, make sure the testing team is on the same wavelength as what you are. They're on the same page, they're doing the test the way you want it done. Determine your scope. Try to get as good of an inventory as you can, including the devices that you're concerned about, the oh no moments, the crown jewels, the things that are the most important to your business. During the test, try to allay the fears of your staff. Try to make things as comfortable as possible. The more collaborative and communicative you can be during the test, the better things go, in my experience. And then plan your responses to anything critical that comes up. Again, if you have a good relationship with your testing team, those moments will go much smoother as well. And then after the test, again, keep asking questions, clarify things that you need. Communicate what you need from the test team, and they should be providing it to you. I, as a tester, am providing a service to you, trying to get you what you need. Use the outbriefs to your advantage. Get those decision makers in the room if they need to hear what's coming out of the testers, and then get the tech team directly in contact with the testers to talk nerd to each other. It helps. It really does. And then reach out after the test if necessary. Take advantage of that. Every team says, hey, we're here for any questions. So use them for sure. Don't think that you're taking advantage. You've paid for a service, and that is part of the service, is making sure that report is to your liking, or not necessarily to your liking, but to your satisfaction. You have gotten the information you need. It might not be the information you like, but it's the information you need. And, I, as a tester, that's where I know I've done my job. I've delivered a report to the customer and they say, yes, this is clear. I know what to do with it. And I know, and I appreciate the clarity and detail of the information provided. Also, other resources. I know that Tim Medine from Red Siege on their Siegecast is doing a pen test process presentation over 3 weeks, I believe is what it is, and it will be on their Siegecast and on YouTube. You can search for Red Siege, and he is definitely going to have excellent information on penetration testing as well. We'll probably cover things that I haven't covered. The guys at Red Siege do an excellent job, and I appreciate their views as well on how the testing process goes and the goal of engagement. So, with that said, thank you for your time and attention today. I hope that some of these tips and ideas will help your future penetration test engagements run as painlessly as possible and deliver maximum return on your investment of time and organizational effort. I have posted my contact information again on this slide. If you have additional questions or specific circumstances you've encountered during tests that you'd like to discuss, I will be on the GRIMMCon Discord after the talk to share more ideas or chat. I'm also reachable on Twitter or LinkedIn and would be glad to discuss anything I didn't cover in this talk. Ways to prepare for pen tests is a big subject, and honestly I could go on for hours given the time and interest. Thanks again to the organizers of GRIMMCon for putting on this event and for selecting my talk. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone.